Watch for me on the mountain, chapter 10. Summer was dying. The red fruit of strawberry cactus still dimpled the desert floor, but the deep pink flowers of Devil's Head had shriveled. Women of the Betonkois had long since picked the blossoms of the guaxikum, rich with honey, and the yucca and varnished acacia had yielded their seed to be pounded into flour. It had not been an easy summer, even for a people whose gene memory of centuries carried the knowledge that war and death were the life of their way. The Betonkois had lost almost a fourth of their women and children. At Kaskiyeh, many families had been touched in the slaughter. Gokalia alone had lost all. The Nedni and Chokinen bands had sent food and clothing. Coverings for teepees and weapons had come also from the Mimbres. And as with all things of this world, the wounds were gradually healing. The routine of life was resumed, except for Gokalia's. He set his teepee apart, high on the canyon's rim above the rancheria. He hunted, but ate little, giving away most of his kills to the old and the sick. Those rising in the early gray of morning saw Gokalia first, kneeling in prayer before his monkish, sparsely furnished teepee. In the evenings of shadow twilight, they saw him again praying.
You're so cute.
Mangus often visited him. Okie dokie. Mangus often visited him, sitting beside him cross-legged before the teepee. And though Gokalia was polite and soft-spoken as he had always been, now he answered only when asked a direct question by Mangus. He was constantly at work before his teepee on pieces of iron, shaping and sharpening the pieces into lances and arrow tips. Deep in the blackness of many nights, the rancheria heard chants far away and high in the mountains, chants that rose thin, unearthly, and caused the mother to rise and pull coverings tighter over her children, and the man to roll a buffalo robe heavier about himself and his mate. The chants were not a harmonizing thing with the earth, the plants, the wind, nothing of this earth. They were tones that invaded the spirit and sought harmony with the Gans. Sometimes they were deep, savagely growling on the wind. Sometimes these chants rose high, screaming, breaking from the screams into a whimpering moan as a soul tortured might cry in hopelessness. A runner from the Tonto Apaches visited the rancheria with a message. The blue-coat soldiers and the white eyes were taking metal from the ground and, seeking to repay the Apaches in a spirit of friendship, and invited them all to a feast. Council fires were lighted and the Betonkois gathered to give their opinions of the invitation and to discuss its meaning. Most spoke in favor of going. There would be food and presents, and going would assure the Bluecoats that the Apaches were a peaceful people when treated fairly. The Bluecoats had not gone away. They were increasing in numbers. It would be good to make treaty with them. Gokalia had stopped before the council fire, and people were silent. The ones who go are fools, he said harshly. There will be no guns seen at the feast, but the Bluecoats do not come in peace. They come with death. I see the Apache lying on the ground and dying. There is no peace. The Betonkois had not gone, and the people of the Tonto, the Coyotero, and the Mescalero, who had feasted with the Bluecoats, had died writhing in agony on the ground. The food had been laced with strychnine. Had Gokalia seen? Was he a shaman? The whispered questions ran through the Betonkois and added weight to the growing conviction in the thoughts of Mangus. The closing days of September were hot, the mountain nights cool and crisp. In a canyon removed from the rancheria, a great fire provided warmth and threw its flickering light high against the darkness. 300 warriors sat on the sloping sides of the canyon, on ledges and rocks. They smoked cigarillos, silent while the firelight played over impassive faces that masked the excitement inside them. They were watching and listening. This was a meeting of three bands, the Betoncois, the Nednes, and the Choconins, all of whom would be known in history as the Chiricahua Apaches. They were here in joint council to consider the growing boldness of the Mexican enemy raiding further into their mountains and the rapid multiplying of the Bluecoats. In the center, seated near the fire, were the three chiefs of these bands, Mangus Coloradus, chief of the Betoncois, in the middle. On his left, a heavily muscled giant rivaling Mangus in stature. He was Woa, pronounced Hoo-ha, but called Jew. On Mangus's right, the lithe, tall chief of the Choconin, with high forehead and calm eyes. He was Cochise. The chiefs listened as warriors advanced singly to stand before the fire and the chiefs and give their thoughts on the matter of decision. Bluecoat soldiers were everywhere about them. Miners were flooding into the hills and canyons, taking metal from the ground. Settlements of white eyes were rising magically in every direction to help supply Mexican troops moving in raids against the Apaches. For 2 hours, every warrior choosing to do so exercised his right and expressed himself before the council and the chiefs. At the last speaker walked away, Mangus stood looking around him. Is there one among you who has not spoken and chooses to do so? Remember, speak now so that all know whatever we decide, we are bound to honor that decision. From out of the canyon shadow, the short, powerful form of Gokalia walked into the center of the firelight. He faced Mangus and the chiefs. There was a time when we were like the panther. There was a time, excuse me. There was a time when we were like the panther, moving to strike the Mexican slave masters and returning to our den. Now we are like the wolf who is wounded without a home. Our enemies are all about us and every hand is turned against the Apache. Already the Bluecoats have slave camps for us, and many of our brother Mescaleros, Membres, and Tontos are dying there. They made treaty to live, but they die in slavery. Some here tonight have said they want to make treaty. If this is what the chiefs and the council decide must be done, then kill me now, here, tonight, in this canyon, for I will honor no treaty. I will make no peace. Would you save your bodies by killing your spirit and your life? Kill my body now, for I will not surrender my spirit to death. I am a warrior. I say leave the Bluecoats to wonder and doubt what we will do. I say strike the Mexicans at our front, while the Bluecoats cannot decide our intentions at our back. I say, and Gokalia raised his fist, shaking it toward the south, I say the time is for war. All summer we have mourned, and the time for mourning is over. Drive the Mexicans back as our grandfathers before us have done. I will mourn no man who falls, and I want none mourning me. I say kill Casquilla, where lies the blood of our women and babies. I say war. He stood for a moment, glaring across the fire and sweeping his eyes around the canyon's wall of warriors while war rumbled echoing away, repeating and dying in the darkness. A deep stirring of sound was rippling through them. Then he turned and walked away into the darkness of the canyon. Slowly the sound of rumbling voices subsided into whispers and then into silence. The crackling and popping of the wood fire echoed hollow and loud. A warrior had defied any decision for treaty or peace, and in the shock of silence that followed, Mangus sat down between Ju and Cochise. He looked in the flames and saw Gokalia speaking, and felt the savage thrill of his voice. Cochise leaned to Mangus. "Is this the man who saw the Apaches dying at the feast? The one of whom you spoke, who has lost all his family?" "Yes," Mangus answered, "this is the man." Ju smiled broadly, breaking the tension, and firelight played on the teeth of a meaningful smile. "I am for this man." He heaved the words out in a loud voice, overcoming his speech impediment. Okay, so he must have said, "I am for this man." Ju knew Gokalia well. They were cousins, and Ju was for war, and war against any enemy. Cochise spoke low in Mangus's ear. He favored the views of Gokalia. He appreciated the cunning that delayed action against the bluecoats who were close to them. War against the Mexicans was traditional. Cochise had honored tradition. It was Cochise who nominated Gokalia. Mangus and Ju agreed. Perhaps Cochise felt something in Gokalia that Mangus felt. Perhaps he only appreciated the craft of the man's thinking. Mangus stood to announce the decision. His great voice boomed in the silence. "We say this, let us all go as one. Let us follow a single leader to guide us. Let him lead us on the trail of war." Let him lead us to Kashkia, Gokakli, war leader of the Chickawas. Screams tore the air, chilling with the tone of unreasoning abandonment. Instantly, the low, throbbing beat of Esadadness filled the canyon, beginning the dance of war, harmonizing the spirit and the body to meet the contest of life and death with the fanatical courage of conviction to kill or be killed. Above the great mass of warriors dancing now and chanting, Gokalia sat cross-legged on a ledge. He watched them with a stoic, brooding face, and in him was no exuberance, only the surety that had begun his purpose. It is obvious and known why Indian families walk single file, the man in front. Ahead is the unknown and therefore a possible danger to the family, and the man must meet it first. But why the Indian warriors run single file is not understood, except by genuine frontiersmen and scouts. Obviously, in meeting danger ahead, the warriors present the target of only a single man. But there's another reason. All trackers know that a man's normal stride is 3 feet. A warrior running behind the man before him need not place his foot directly in the print of his predecessor. His foot may fall anywhere in that 3-foot stride, as may that of the man behind him. A tracker crossing his trail can count with certainty up to 3 warriors and guess as high as 6 or 7. Beyond that, he is helpless to estimate with any accuracy the number of warriors who have passed. And so 2 days following the naming of Gokalia as the war leader, they ran single file into the twilight of late September. They took no horses. A horse must be cared for on a long journey, watered and fed. An Apache can run 100 miles on a mouthful of water, a handful of pinon nuts. A horse cannot. Lean and hard of body, they wore breech clouts, boot moccasins, and war bands holding bushed black hair in place. They were armed with lances, bows, and arrows, and wore knives slapping against thighs in their sheaths. 20 paces ahead, the short, powerful figure of their leader swung easily in a slow run. Behind him ran the 3 most feared Apache chiefs in the Southwest, Mangus Colorados, Ju, and Cochise. The long line of warriors following stretched a quarter mile. The orders of their leader were simple. Kill the owner of any eyes that saw them. Even 2 Apache warriors on the warpath struck terror into the populace of entire settlements, and 300 to be seen and reported would send fantastic messages of alarm in all directions for 200 miles. First to the southeast they ran, with the lights of Tucson twinkling far off to their right. Touching the edge of the Dragoons, they waited in her tree fringes for a day to pass before running past the lights of Tombstone, onto the empty prairie running in the darkness that winked with the fires of mule trains on their way to the mining camps. The drovers of the mule trains were blessed that night, for the leader swung wide with his warriors, and so their eyes did not see, and the drovers lived. Entering the Sierra Madre, they did not take the familiar paths along her edge of the plains, but used the war trails more difficult and less traveled in the interior. Now they traveled by day, resting at night, and on the evening of their fourth day after entering the Madre, Gokaklia led them down from the mountains, far away on the prairie, perhaps a dozen miles. Night torches blinked and flickered in the prairie wind. Unerringly, Gokaklia had brought them to Cascaia. Some slept beneath the trees, most of them sat alone, watching the distant lights. Every warrior knew what the morning meant. It was not a raid for food or provisions. This would be a battle called forth by the Apaches. Only the winners would leave the field, the losers would stay. In the deadness before dawn, Gokaklia called them about him. They prayed to Usen, not for help, but that each man would not abandon his courage, living or dying. Some knelt in their praying, some stood, looking to the sky and the mountains. Gokaklia explained how they must place themselves He talked slowly and quietly, as if he were explaining the way to hunt turkeys or rabbits. Lifting his arms, he formed a U. The mouth of the U, he explained, would face the gate entrance to Cascaia. Mangus would command one prong of the U, Cochise the other. At the bottom of the U, stretching back toward the mountains, Ju would command. The warrior line making up the U would connect the chiefs. Cochise stepped forward. "Do you say the Mexican soldiers will come into the U down the middle between our lines?" "Yes," Gokaklia answered. "How?" "I will lead them," Gokaklia said quietly. Cochise looked thoughtfully at Mangus and Ju, and then away toward Cascaia. He said nothing more. Gokaklia's mystery of how he could lead the soldiers belonged to Gokaklia. Let him do it. While the gray before dawn still ghosted the prairie, distorting shapes of cactus and bush, the Apaches moved into position. Silent, crouching in their running no higher than brush tops, they moved toward Cascaia. Coming close, they began disappearing one by one, taking their places in the lines. Before the sun rose, before the first village cock crowed, thin and strangling against the wind, they had disappeared, leaving the prairie as they first saw it, empty and waving in the wind. Cathedral bells broke the sun's rising over a clear rim, red and cloudless. As the sun lifted itself from the earth, dust and changed its redness to a pitiless white, Cascaia awakened to life. End of chapter.